I mean, it's called Spy Game. It's Brad Pitt. It's Robert Redford. It's Tony Scott. I think it's supposed to be an action movie, and the only real action takes place in the Vietnam scene and then Beirut.
I mean, I might have fast forwarded a little bit.
You motherfucker.
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
I
finally
Watched.
I
finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and I finally watched Spy Game.
And today we have my friend Gharrett back, and we're finally letting him do like a non-Denis movie. Because I think, isn't that it so far? Prisoners and Sicario, or did you do another two?
No, I did
You
the
did Margin Call, I think.
Yeah,
Margin
Margin
Call.
Call
That's
and
right.
Ready or Not.
You were on Ready or Not? I forgot about
Yeah.
that was Alon when he was like 1 October. He's like, we have to have a guest for every episode this month. I was like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But you guys just did Arrival without me.
Oh, that was David's complete choice, by the way.
Well, I asked
That's
you
fine.
about. Didn't I ask you about Social Network? But it was just I asked you way too late.
Yeah, you asked me like the day before, but that's okay. Arrival is not my favorite Denis Villeneuve movie.
We try to do we do at least an episode a week, but for like 3 months in a row we had 2 Friday the 13th episodes and a special Christmas episode that we had to get through, which packed our month. And so when he asked you last minute, it was because we were just like one after the other. There was like no room.
Well, no. Also, you were gone for weeks. We had to record like.
Well, that's what I'm
recorded,
saying.
We recorded 4 episodes in like a week and a half.
I was proud of
What
us.
was your Christmas episode? Was that Prometheus?
That's Prometheus.
Yeah.
We almost called an audible at the very end and did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but we'll just have to save that for next year.
Yeah. This is kind of a Christmas movie too.
Spy Game?
Yeah.
The Anne Cathcart affair?
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That is true. So, my main memory of this movie is my dad had his cousin over and we were trying to watch a movie and we put in the DVD of Spy Game and it kept skipping and he kept trying to get it to fix it to where we could watch it through. And me and his cousin were making fun of him so much that it just became like so much more enjoyable like than actually watching the movie with him. But I've seen this movie probably 10 or so times and I love it each time. I think this time too, I'm glad we did it because whenever we do an episode, I really like pay attention and pick things apart. Although I think I might have missed some stuff that I might have questions about, but there's just so many little details put in this movie. And I always love a CIA movie. And this one is very interesting because it's a spycraft. It's a tradecraft movie, but the tradecraft is against his own agency. And it's also like a boardroom procedural type thing. So right up my alley. Gharrett, what's your history with this? Because I know you and I have talked about it. That's why you're on here, is because we've talked about it like a ton before.
Yeah, so this was, I think, my second Tony Scott movie. I watched True Romance with my brother. He like got me to watch it, and I was like, "Oh, this movie's so cool!" And he's like, "Well, he's got another one that just came out called Spy Game," and I was like, "Let's do it." I also have always been a very big fan of Brad Pitt, and so the watching just the cool like fast action, fast like shooting moves that Tony Scott does with the cool soundtrack, I just thought this was the coolest movie. And I think after this, I was like, I'm definitely going to be a spy. Like when I grow up, that's in the cards.
Gharrett in espionage.
Yeah, it didn't play out that way actually, but
you just made me realize that my first Tony Scott movie, I did not know this was a Tony Scott movie, or I forget it all the time, was The Fan with Wesley Snipes and Robert De Niro. I fucking love that movie. I'm like one of a very few amount of people that really love that movie, but I think it's good.
It's good. Well, and The Last Boy Scout, like I wasn't sure if I'd seen The Last Boy Scout at this point, but I don't think that I had.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I think I've seen Enemy of the State, but I don't remember if I've seen parts of it or all of it. But I think I saw The Fan, and then this might be my second too. And then I think everything else I came to quite a bit later. And I haven't seen a lot of his. I haven't seen Beverly Hills Cop 2. I haven't seen Days of Thunder. Haven't seen Last Boy Scout. Haven't seen Crimson Tide. I'm really, really slacking on my Tony Scott, even though I love Tony Scott.
But you love Man on Fire.
I love Man on Fire.
So I actually was a little bored with the movie. And I was like, okay, I think the beginning is really cool. The beginning setup is really cool. They play Rocky Mountain Way as he recants the story of meeting Brad Pitt. I'm like, okay, I didn't really know this was this type of movie, but I'm in it. And then it all of a sudden became not this type of movie. So I was like, okay, I guess that was like a tonal shift I wasn't prepared for. And then the ending was super cool. I really dug the ending. It was the middle bit that I was just like, what is the point of him recanting the story to all these CIA guys in such detail that really progressed his not motivation, but his goal? And I was like, what is moving his goal forward apart from just like the ending where he's kind of going in and out of offices illegally and trying to get that? I just was like, I just didn't find the interconnection for the middle bit to be like making sense on why the movie is so focused on us knowing why Brad Pitt is where he is, what he's doing, and everything like that. That was my problem with the movie.
Wait, I have a question. When you say the middle bit, do you mean the romance part of it in Beirut?
I think he means the Robert Redford part.
No. I guess maybe the setup, the meeting. Okay, the romance part in Beirut is part of it, but I was okay with establishing her, obviously, as a character and the reason why he went into China to I got all that. I just thought there were some parts that lingered a little long in imagining Robert Redford talking about all of this to the nine guys in the room.
Yeah, I mean, hard disagree on
That's a
everything
really
you
hot
said.
take.
I guess
Sorry to interrupt.
so. I guess so.
All of the Robert Redford spycraft in the room, that was what you didn't like?
The
No.
spycraft in the spy movie, I was not a fan of.
No, the spycraft. Okay, listen. Everything in the office that he's doing proactively to get Brad Pitt out was cool. That's the part that really hooked me to the movie. What I'm saying is that when he recants the story of...
It's recounts, by the way. If you recant something, you're taking it back.
It's taking it back, right? When he recounts the story of the reason they're in Beirut and the assassination of the Sheik, right? Sheik?
Yeah,
That's
one
what
you
they're
got
called?
right. That's yeah.
That part lost me a little.
So I agree with you that the the Beirut story is not very exciting. That's my least enjoyable part of the film.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I was asking Beirut versus the spy stuff, because with the doctor and with the girlfriend, I agree that with Hadley, I got bored of that, and I justified it as they need a reason for Brad Pitt to care.
Well, because my first time watching it, I fell asleep during that part, and I woke up and I finished the rest of the movie, and I was like, well, I got the movie, I understood the movie, so I guess that part wasn't important. And then I rewatched the whole thing without falling asleep this time, and I was like, oh, that part really wasn't important. Like, there was just like 30-40 minutes in there that they're just like building his relationship with her, the meeting, and like the part where I woke up in the first time was where Robert Redford sits down with them at that cafe with the cheap scotch, and he's like, so you're not allowed it to in England anymore. So let's take that part and back it maybe 30 minutes. That's what I missed. And then I felt like that was really slowing it down.
So should we go back to the beginning where the first hour of this movie is impeccable?
Okay, let's go back to that.
Yeah, so it starts out with the Su Chow like plot to get her out. The whole plan just rests on Brad Pitt getting electrocuted, though, which is just amazing.
And surviving that, right? Like,
Well, and then getting some sort of shot that makes you seem that kills you for like 30 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever.
I thought that's what the electrocution was for.
Yeah, apparently not. I love the way to get him to stop being electrocuted. They just hit him with a fucking chair.
Oh, our boy Benedict Wong is in this.
He
He has
is.
a very important role.
Yeah, I'm so confused about his role because first he is like, is he supposed to be Vietnamese or is he American? But then he's working in China.
I think he is an American soldier in Vietnam who's I think the term of art is the spotter for
Yeah.
Brad Pitt's sniper. Like this, I think this is one of the parts of the movie that I think is so cool. So he's Brad Pitt's spotter. Brad Pitt obviously gets recruited in the CIA. He does too. And then fast forward 15 years or whatever, and he is the CIA agent on Operation Sideshow,
Right.
who then helps Brad Pitt. So like Brad Pitt owes him one, or he owes Brad Pitt one because Brad Pitt saves his life.
And then he
And he
calls him
pays
in
it
towards
back.
the end to get him out.
Exactly. So then he uses him for this rogue mission.
One thing I found really cool about the movie is that apart from that one spot Garrett and I were talking about earlier, every moment Tony Scott found a way to make an interesting scene more interesting. And so like they in this beginning part they're sent out to assassinate Red Shirt. And you're like, all right, an assassination, it's cool, whatever. But then the tactical helicopter comes in and like fucks it all up, right? And it's just like it's a super cool. I thought, and I was like, okay, that'd be cool, but unrealistic. I thought he was gonna shoot the Red Shirt between the blades of the helicopter.
Yeah, I thought that too.
You thought that too?
I love that scene, and it's also, I mean, it once again confused me about Benedict Wong because you see him in the beginning and he somehow escapes. I don't really get that, but no one else does. I also like that scene is so similar to the opening of Shooter, Lone Survivor, that like every time it happens, I was like, all right, well, what happens in this little part of it? The same thing with the doctor going into the building to kill the Sheik. I'm always like, I always forget what exactly. I know that the building gets blown up, but I always forget exactly how that goes down. But back to the Su Chow prison. So I just this time too, and thought every time if he had just brought candy bars instead of gum, he would have just made it out of here because that guy would have been.
Or just don't give the guy gum.
Yeah, but you gotta give him something to shut him up, and you give him that candy, show him you're friendly. He finishes eating it, instead of just chewing gum.
When I was a kid, it took me forever to learn how to pop bubbles with bubble gum. I love how this guy with no teeth is just like, yeah, I'm just gonna blow the biggest fucking bubble.
Yeah, really fucked things up for our guys.
I do. I like how the title card drops too, right? Like
Right? Yeah,
Brad Pitt, arms up, and then we get the cool fast motion camera and audio, and then Spy Game.
Did you guys notice, because you were talking about like Tony Scott making every scene interesting, all the flashbacks were shot differently? So Vietnam was colored differently than Beirut, than Berlin, just to make you kind of feel like the location.
Yep. Yeah. And like the transitions to get in and out of all those are different too.
Yeah, right. I only noticed that after reading that happened, and then watching it again today. I was like, oh, that's cool, and that makes sense.
It doesn't happen so drastically that it pulls you out of the movie, though. It happens like subtly subtle changes that still, like David says, keep you interested, but not breaks you from your watch.
The only criticism I had with the time lapse or the location changing is how they kept taking us back to Brad Pitt getting beat up in prison to like remind us that he's there, but they keep talking about him in the conference room. So I feel like that was an unnecessary.
I had that problem, but with the black and white freeze frame of 8 a.m., 12 hours left. I'm like, I don't want this.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
so-
loved that.
You
I
like
felt
that?
like that kept me because it's all based on the 24-hour, right? The clock stops or the clock starts now, and then that kept me like understanding what time of day it was.
Yeah. So it
I
apparently
under
was-
I hold on. I'm not saying like I had the problem with like the timestamps. I just like the freeze frame black and white things seem like overly dramatic.
yeah,
Oh yeah, that's fair.
I think he wanted to. He said that he wanted to purposely not have people lose track of the stakes of this, which is like this guy is going to die. These people are in a conference room trying to get to the point where they're comfortable letting this guy be murdered. Like that's what this is.
I thought it was more about being able to justify him being murdered. I think everyone except for Robert Redford was instantly comfortable. They're like he's expendable.
Yeah, but you get what I'm saying. Like they are papering the file, if you will.
Yeah.
Why did he tell Gladys that this was about money at first?
Free
'Cause
trade
it
with
is.
China.
They
There's
don't want to
okay.
screw up the trade talks.
Because he piggybacked on another mission to bug like the Chinese consulate or something, not a consulate, but just like bug them so they could hear what their thoughts were on the trade and then use that against them. So
Okay, so there was a couple of moments in this movie that I was just like, what's happening? And that was definitely one of them. The other one was where the media was like, oh, his bishop's capture in China was a hoax. I was like, okay.
yes, so Robert Redford calls his guy Digger, who plants that story. And then Charlie, when they hear about it and Robert Redford leaves, he's like, "Oh, I took care of it. This is fine. They can't let him die now."
Oh,
Charlie
okay.
calls a different person and say it was a hoax.
Okay, yeah, the Digger stuff kind of confused me.
Well, he's MI6, so yeah.
Yeah, so he's not. That was why Robert Redford called him. Like every single piece of information that Robert Redford shares with the CIA team and every action he takes is like designed to help cover his ass if
Right.
they ask him about it, which
I
I think is a really cool feature.
Well, and also just the way like this movie starts too, and you like get a sense of how good he is. He gets a call about Boy Scout, and he's like, "You have 25 minutes to get to the office." He gets there and immediately knows not to check it from like not to have him be the one that pulls it. He has this other guy pull it for him, so that he's like, they'll eventually figure out that I made this happen, but I'm not gonna make it too easy for them to figure out that I did it. And then like going into that other Andy Unger's office and stealing his key, he's like, I'm going to need this. Like he immediately goes into spy mode, which I think is so cool.
I found that I can tell that this is going to be a movie that few scenes stick with me for like forever. Like whenever I think about this movie, it's like the scene is going to stick with me. And the one where, well, I guess two, the one where he switches the China imagery with the Bahama imagery
Yeah.
is so cool. But also the fact that he has exactly $282,000.
Well, that's why he offers it, because he's like, that's as much as I have.
No, but that's the price of the Bahama thing.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think that's as much as he could justify, right? Like, I think he has more money. He's just saying, if I go over this and then I'm asked about it, I can't really explain it away.
Because that was his savings, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, because that's what that property cost. I got you. Okay. I never thought of it that way, because he says, yeah, liquidate all of it, except he's like, I don't care about the cars or something like that, but liquidate everything else. So I mean, I guess,
Oh, I get it now. Okay.
but it's a minor detail. But I actually like you're thinking of it of like if I go over this amount, it doesn't jive with how much I took out on the day that I'm paying for this.
Because the other guy says it's not even your money anyways. Like, don't
Which it
be so
is.
stingy about it, you know?
I mean, it is his money. I did like. He basically now has to be like kind of a hired merchant. He has to go work. Like he has to go, do a few jobs. Like he's the A team now to afford his life.
Doesn't Brad Pitt look like he could be Robert Redford's son?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Like
definitely
Brad Pitt is aging to look like Robert Redford at
the
this
mom
point.
definitely has to be hot though, because
I mean,
Brad Pitt looking real good in this.
yeah, Brad Pitt looks good and everything. I mean, they're both very good looking. I also like their chemistry. Like they do a very, very good job of like Boy Scout and mentor.
Yeah. It gives like you were saying, it gives A-Team vibes.
But didn't
Yeah.
Robert Redford direct him?
Yeah, a river runs through it.
Yeah, right. It's a good one. It's not my favorite early Brad Pitt. More of a Legend of the Falls kind of guy.
Yeah. You seem like a more Legends of a Falls kind of guy.
I am.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the greatest epic movies ever made.
I've never seen it, but
It's the best Montana movie. I don't know if you can find a better one than that. You got anything? No? Okay.
where's the Revenant shot?
Alberta.
No.
Idaho? Wyoming?
Wyoming?
No, it was shot in Canada.
I know,
Well,
but
where was it based?
where does it take place?
Oh, it's North Dakota.
Oh, yeah, the Badlands? Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. All right, we're far afield.
Going back to recruitment.
They bring him into the meeting because Charlie asks for those files, and he's like, oh, man, it's going to take me forever to find those. And then he immediately... It is a little like convenient that his Bishop file. Do you think he just always knew Brad Pitt was going to be a fuck up? So he's like, I have to keep this file separate with my Bahamas stuff.
No, I think it was that he let him run wild, right? And they talk about that. It's like you let a field agent develop assets and do all these things. And he's like, yeah, he was that good. So I think there's a special place in his heart.
It's also weird that like, does Brad Pitt work for the CIA?
Yeah.
Like it almost felt like he was like the Nathan Muirs get like they can hire their own independent contractors that are like paid off the books.
No, so they don't talk about it, but they kind of hint at it. So Nathan Muir is a case officer. I have no idea how accurate like any of this is to the actual CIA.
Right.
But Nathan Muir is a case officer and Brad Pitt is a field agent. And when they talk about letting him develop assets in Germany to go back across the wall, right, to East Berlin, he's like, yeah, he was that good. I thought he'd be a case officer someday.
Yep. All right. That makes sense. So the next, we talked about Vietnam a little bit, the shooting. He needs a sniper and he just happens to, the guy he wants is dead. So he has to turn to Brad Pitt. And, there's a little bit of Brad Pitt, like, I don't want to know anything about the guy. I'll do it, which is, building his character for later on. Like he cares more about the people, whereas Nathan wouldn't. He's like, whatever. This is just a guy we have to kill. I don't care. You can tell me all about his family. I'll still kill him.
I was just gonna say, even in the way he kills the Sheik in Beirut is two completely different ways of going about it.
Yeah. I mean, we'll definitely talk about that more. One thing. So I wanted to talk about his secretary. So I love the lady that plays his secretary. I think
Gladys.
She's been in like a bunch of shows I've watched. Marianne Jean-Baptiste. But he's like, oh, here, take this burn back. She's like, do I want to know it? And he's like, yeah, absolutely not. She's like, can this get me fired? She's like, whatever. I can, I don't want to work for Andy Unger anyway. And she has this line. She's like, what? Like, what is all this about? And he says, when did Noah build the ark? And he's basically like, I've been through this before. Like, I can see what's happening before I have any of the information. Like, I know what they're going to do. And it's almost too, like, his motivation in this is very interesting because we can talk about it at the end. But, like, throughout the entire buildup of the movie, he is the rest of those guys. He's like, I'll let you go in a second. I'm not risking my life for you. If you fuck up, like, that's on you and you're probably going to die. And that's it.
Well, isn't he motivated because he's the reason that Brad Pitt is trying to break Hadley out of Suchow?
I think that's the main motivation.
Hadley is the reason that
I th-
Hadley's in Suchow. Okay.
Yeah, she killed somebody. I think that's part of the reason, but I think it's also like maybe it's revealing a little bit like what all of what he said, initially was sort of like tough love, like, oh, this is idealistic, the way you should be, but I'm not actually that. Um, and then a little bit like I think he feels responsible, and he could also feel responsible because he's like, I didn't train this guy well enough. It's like I didn't train him well enough to not develop feelings, so it's a little bit my fault that he got caught.
I think it's a little different than that because there's a lot revealed about his character throughout this movie, and there's a drastic difference between past Robert Redford and present Robert Redford. And past Robert Redford, he would kill an asset without even thinking twice about it, right? But this one, the present one, he's breaking all the rules trying to save Brad Pitt, which is like the first rule he says to Brad Pitt when he's recruiting him. He's like, save money, don't pull it out for anyone. And then later on, he's like, dump this asset, blah, blah, blah. But he's almost, and you find out later that he has had no children, right? Like one wife, no kids. So he might be looking at Brad Pitt as like a son in a way.
Yeah, I think Garrett's explanation though is the most obvious though. It's like he went after her and I'm the one that put her there. And he only did it, like his motivation of putting her in prison is like, I want my boy back. Like you chose her over me. Like I want you back. Like you're too good of an agent to like lose it all for this woman. Yeah, it's a little bit weird. So after Vietnam, also too, he like almost leaves him after the mission. Like he's like, oh, you want to go back one more time? He's like, nah, we're good. And then he sees him and he picks him up.
Well, even
and-
he was like, hey, let's go to, what was it, Argentina or something after this?
Well, no, that's way later.
No,
in the
that was
movie.
after Beirut.
Yeah, I'm talking about Vietnam when he's Benedict Wong gets injured and Robert Redford's like picking them up on the helicopter and they don't see him at first. And he's like, oh, the commander's like, do you want to make another pass? And he's like, no, we don't have to. But then he sees them. And they go back to the meeting. He's like, did you have presidential authorization for those kills? And he's like, he like looks at them. He's like, are you guys fucking kidding me? Like, cause that's the other thing too, is like everyone in this meeting is, and like, you'll see this in a lot of workplaces, is pretending they don't understand how things work. There's like a rule book and then there's the way we actually do things. And when shit goes south, they're like, hey, what about the rule book? And it's like, come on, don't be a dick. Like, you understand how this works. Like, go fuck yourself that you're like, now, like, hey, let's look at the rule book.
Well, what were they trying to do? They were trying to like entrap him?
No, they are looking for a reason to let him die.
Oh, okay. So they're trying to be like, oh, see, he broke the law, and so
he
we
did
can
a
let
mission
him
he
die.
shouldn't have, so we
Right.
can let him die. We're justified in letting him die.
And Robert Redford does a really good job of like never answering any question. Like they'll ask him a question and he'll ponder it and be like, I don't know you. Like, who are you? And just completely change the subject. Which I think he's the best.
Fourth
spy.
wife is calling me right now.
I also love when he is talking to his secretary and she's like, they're fucking rummaging through your office, like all the work I did. And he's just pretending to talk to her so he can listen into them. He's like, yeah, But then he turns around just to let them know, like, I heard what you're saying. What are you guys talking about? Sideshow's the name of it? And they're like, oh, fuck.
No, see, he knows the name of the sideshow because he reads in Reflection.
I was just
he was like, oh, so an assassin. You're labeling him as an assassin.
Yeah, right. The details didn't matter. They matter in the movie, but they didn't matter to me. So then he tells her to go burn the files. And, oh, by the way, the guy that he gets to pull the wire for him in the beginning is a very small actor. But I recognized him from the Third Bourne movie. He's the guy that, like, gets blown up in Morocco.
Okay.
Neil Daniels in the movie. His name's Constant in real life.
We believe you.
Good. I'm glad you do. So then they go into this is after he leaks the story to Hong Kong, but he comes back and he goes into his recruitment. I love, like, These are all the details when you're not like paying attention that you miss. But he talks about his recruitment. He's like, I made his CO send him to Berlin where there was not a single other person, so he'd feel isolated and lonely. So that then when I show up, he's like basically like was like negging him into like I'm gonna get him as low as I possibly can, and then I'm gonna be a beacon, and he'll want to join the CIA, which is exactly what happens like in the movie.
Yeah, it's all manipulation. He even says that. He's like, the tactic was isolate and alienate.
Yep. And then the trade craft montage, probably like top 3 or 4 scenes for me.
Agreed. I think it's so good, especially how Brad Pitt does everything really, really well, and Robert Redford finds a way to like tell him it could have been better or criticize him. You know what I mean? Like even when he like has to pick up the woman or get information about her, and he's like, "You just told her 4 lies that now, like, what if she were an asset? Those would now have to be true."
He says the 4 lies. The one that he says is you're straight. So is this a gay romance movie between Brad Pitt and Robert Redford?
No, he's just saying you hit on her. Like you have to be careful about that.
Not that gay. He's
Well,
apparently
that's
got
why
it.
he's mad in the end when he chooses Hadley over him. He's like, we're supposed to be boys.
The boys. Yeah. That whole thing in the restaurant is pretty cool too, right? Like he's like, what do you think about the suit in the kitchen? He's like, how did you even see him? And he just points to like the reflection on the table. And then the line where he's like, so that guy reading the menu, he's not reading at all. Is he a problem? And then the line where he goes, for the hostess.
That scene reminds me of Born Identity so much. Like when he's like,
Yeah.
he's like, oh, I can know that guy can handle himself. I know that the truck's got a gun. Like, that. How would I know that?
It
CIA
reminds
training.
me of a Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes scene where he eyes the guy he's fighting. He's like, broken tibula.
Yeah.
Broke it in the 4th grade. All I have to do is apply some pressure on it.
Which, by the way, I was going to say this later, but Brad Pitt turned down the Born Identity to do this movie, which is like a huge benefit for his friend Matt Damon, like because that movie kind of made his career.
Yeah, I saw that. I think that I would like. I'm a big fan of Brad Pitt, but I like The Bourne Identity with Matt Damon.
I do too, but in the alternate universe where I don't know about Matt Damon in it, like Brad Pitt in it is pretty awesome. It's a different movie though.
It is a different
is.
movie because one thing that makes Bourne work so well is that Matt Damon isn't so obviously.
Well, and he can turn off the charm where Brad
Yeah.
Pitt can't. Brad
Right.
Pitt cannot turn off his charm.
That's true
No, he's
too.
always too charming.
Yeah. So the tradecraft montage we talked about, cigarettes and lighter, always keep it. It's a great icebreaker. I need you to be in that apartment building in 5 minutes. And then this is where you talked about the rules earlier. Put money away, die somewhere warm, don't touch it, and then don't risk your life for an asset.
And I think that all of that comes back at the end except for the apartment thing.
It's like, if it comes down to you or them, send flowers.
And then that's when it switches, right? So after we kind of skipped the Anne Cathcart.
No, we're there now. Operation Rodeo. So I watched this movie. This is like a great while I'm working movie. So I put it on probably 6 months ago. And that was the first time I was like, Charlotte Rampling. Like, oh my. Which apparently Tony Scott said that she was his childhood fantasy. Which I don't know why you say that right after that you've directed her in the movie. But anyway, she was hot in that scene. In a very small scene, 30 seconds. She's barely in it. And then we see his third wife, and he's like, how many fucking wives does this guy had? He's like, I've had 4. Comes back up. Obviously. The Berlin scene to the rooftop scene afterwards. That's my favorite part of the movie. That is, you talked earlier, Alon, about what do you remember from this movie? Whenever I think about this movie, I think about Berlin and the rooftop, the argument afterwards.
Okay. I mean,
I agree.
It's good. I do like / finds kind of silly that scene ends with Brad Pitt brooding over the building. Like Robert Redford has somewhere to go, he's leaving, but Brad Pitt can't just like follow him out, so he turns and he like walks to the edge of the building as there's like the pan out, and he's just like Batman, like brooding over Beirut
They're in Berlin.
or Berlin, wherever.
I mean, the chase is really cool too. Like him, I guess, taking Ipecac in the bathroom to throw up.
That is cool.
That's what always stuck out with me, and I was like, oh, I'd be such a good spy. Like, I could throw up in a urinal if I needed to. And he, like, splashes the vodka over him. Like, he does everything to cover his tracks. And then still has to drop the guy.
And when he's throwing him out of the car and pulling him out, and just like, no. And just like, I cannot help you. And we're proved Robert Redford right, because when he gets to the checkpoint, there's a photo of the dude they're looking for. Although they didn't check the trunk, but, whatever.
You know what's interesting is Charlotte Rampling, young Charlotte Rampling, looks like Catherine McCormick. It's very interesting.
Do you know what movie we've done with Catherine McCormick?
She looks familiar, but I don't know.
Braveheart.
Yeah, it's Braveheart.
She's the reason William Wallace freed Scotland.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, he
Braveheart.
freed an entire country for her, and Brad Pitt broke her out of prison. I mean, those are pretty equal things.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt saved a life. Mel Gibson couldn't make that happen.
It says she's also in True Romance, or is that just an IMDb fuck up?
I don't remember what she would be in True Romance. So, by the way, the rooftop scene, Tony Scott asked for more money to film it with a helicopter going around it, and the producers said absolutely not, so he paid for it with his own money. And it's so fucking cool. Having a helicopter filming them arguing, and it goes around several times, and then the helicopter like flies away, and you see it like kind of pulling out.
Where do you think that chair went?
Where he threw it?
Yeah,
Probably some people downstairs that caught it. Hopefully,
that's what I was thinking. Oh, I caught it with their head.
we just get the like the Wilhelm scream after he throws it.
I thought
this anymore.
It hit Charlotte Rampling. Didn't they say she was bludgeoned to death?
That's what they in the yeah, they're in the meeting. They're like, where'd that chair go? Was Cathcart down there? That she was bludgeoned to death. Yeah, that's all wraps up.
What was Boy Scout's reaction when he found out she died? Was he cool with it? Like, can we put that on him?
I love too. I don't know if this is the point, where he turns to them. It's either this or some other time where he just turns to Troy, which is like the guy leading this meeting, and I guess pretty high up in the CIA, and he's like, "Why are you guys trying to do this?" Which he knows the answer, and they know the answer, but he's just like calling them out. And I guess almost on the record, like, "Why are you guys trying to burn him?" And then this is when he sees the sideshow reflection. He's like, and it's almost like, I don't know, he's just to throw this guy off, to throw Charles Harker off. He's like, what sideshow? And then he sees the reflection. He's like, oh, fuck. But it's like, I don't know, is it just to fuck with him? Like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Like, why would you tell him?
No, I think it's to start the conversation about sideshow, right?
To get them to start talking.
Yeah, to let them know that he knows maybe a little bit more than, because he wants to kind of go to Harker. He wants to bait him into trying to outdo him. That's why at lunch, Harker is like, oh, he called Digger, like he called this guy, he knew about it beforehand, and gets all proud of himself. I think the 282,000, Nathan is trying to get Harker to call him out and make him look bad just so he can turn it around on him.
Well, it's funny too, because, and this is obviously skipping way ahead, but he first asks him, he's like, why did you pretend to play dumb when you knew about this before the meeting? And he doesn't answer that question. He just sits there. And then he asks him a question that he does have a good answer for. And he's like, oh, well, I'll answer that one. He never answers the initial question. And then it makes Harker look so stupid that they're like, all right, let's just fucking move on. Thanks a lot, fucking detective. Like, this led to nothing.
Well, it's all a buildup to kind of make Harker look stupid, right? Like when he goes and his psychological dealings with people too. Like when he goes into that guy's office, and then I don't know his name, but once I explain the scene, you guys will know what I'm talking about. It's like all up on the board, right? And he switches the light off the board because he doesn't want him to know about the location. And so he goes in and he's like, "You're not supposed to be in here." And he's like, "Well, if I wasn't supposed to be in here, why did my key work on the door?
Yeah.
You
How
know,
did I get in here?
how did I get in?" But as he's leaving, he's like, "Hey, come to my party," because he knows that this guy has like I don't know, maybe like a perception that he has of him, like maybe not a fond one, right? He's like, "Hey, I'm planning a farewell party. You should come." Blah blah. So when he comes back into the when what's his face,
Charles.
the
Harker.
Charles, yes, comes back into the room and he's like, "Hey, what was Nathan talking about in here?" And he's like, "Hey, he's coming to my party. He was talking about the party." So all of
You
the
were invited? Guess he doesn't like you.
no, he goes, "I don't think you're invited." But yeah, everything preceding that is like the guy is going to focus on being invited to the party, which I think is really like just shows Nathan's um resilience and professionalism.
Smart.
Spycraft.
Yeah, it's just straight
His
crap.
spycraft.
By the way, the guy says when he invites him to the party, "Oh, I didn't think you liked me." He doesn't respond to it.
He
He
just
just like
laughs.
chuckles. He's like, "Huh." Walks out.
Well, he does the Robert Redford smile, and like he does that throughout the movie. I love it.
Yeah. The scene we didn't talk about the dialogue on the scene on the rooftop is so good. And he's like, "You have to make me understand. We killed that guy." And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "This is not a fucking game." He's like, it is a fucking game and it's not for kids.
I really thought he was going to be like, "You're right. It's a spy game."
Dun, dun.
Da-da.
I wondered if what he said was true when he claims that guy went to the Soviets and said he had an American that he could use. And Brad Pitt's like, "Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that shit."
Yeah.
So,
Oh, you think it's a lie? Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe.
oh yeah. He's like, "Yeah,
Also,
I
how
can
does
see it
Brad
either way.
Pitt? Brad Pitt is very angry because apparently the guy died on a cellar floor. Does he know that for a fact?
I think he knows.
I think it's
They took him?
probably pretty well established.
Okay.
Either he knows for sure or he's like, it's definitely going to happen because they're looking for that guy.
Well, it
that-
bothered me that I'm just gonna just
Beat a
say what's on
fucking
my-
dead horse into the fucking ground about
No.
this.
But it does bother me how Robert Redford on one hand was correct about them looking for him because he has their photo at the checkpoint at the border, right?
Yeah.
But it does bother me that they never checked the trunk, that they just let Brad Pitt go, and he could have just easily put him in the trunk and been okay.
But you don't know. It's kind of like
Hindsight's
stealing
2020.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
stealing something from a store. Sometimes you get checked, sometimes you don't. It's the name of the
Mm.
game. So the story breaks that they have Bishop in China. So Robert Redford's like, "We're all good. I'm leaving." Goes to the door, sees, oh, it was a hoax. So immediately goes to Gladys. He's like, "I need imaging." And then she's like, "Could I get fired?" And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "All right, good." So then he goes to the scene you talked about with Kepler and the party and all that. And he's like, "Who's at that prison?" We find out it's Commander Wiley. So then Charles Harker is like, "Hey, we need you back upstairs." Because he had said like, "Oh, don't you want to know about Hadley?" He's like, "I know, I know about Hadley." He's like, "Yeah, but do you know why why she's in that prison? And why he wants her out and all that." It's a pretty interesting story. So as they're going back upstairs, just to fuck with him, he's like, "You have something in your teeth," just to throw him off, just to get him on his toes, to mess with him. Just very funny. Like,
It's
so
to
good.
get him to stop thinking about why Nathan wasn't responding when he screamed at him, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's chasing him and yelling at him, and all he can think about is, why aren't you responding? And then it's like, oh, you've got something in your teeth.
The way that they keep the audience in the dark, I thought was really cool. Like Robert Redford does things that you immediately are like, "Oh, I know what he's doing here," right? Like when he leaves the cigarette box purposely on the table, you're like, "Oh, you're going to go back for it." He doesn't go back for it. He sends the other guy back for it, but that was the plan too, right? But the things that he keeps the audience in the dark with is really cool with like the Bahama China switch thing, right? You don't know what he's doing or why he's doing it until you get to the point where you're like, "Oh yeah, I get it."
Right. So the next part is the least favorite part for I think all three of us probably. I guess Tony Scott wanted to add more of the romance, and the producers actually talked him out of that. And I think that's good. I think you can leave that stuff off camera, and it'll be like we can get it that Brad Pitt fell in love with the hot woman, and the hot woman fell in love with Brad Pitt. Like
What?
that's fine. So I don't think we need it explained to us. And I mean, the Sheik story we can go through a little bit. Like this guy's a bad guy, killing a lot of people, so we're going to kill him. Needed to make it look like an accident, otherwise there will be repercussions. And we have this doctor. Brad Pitt's been there for a while, apparently a great photojournalist, which Tony Scott said was actually true, that he was really good photographer.
Were those snapshots actually Brad Pitt snapshots?
Fuck, I don't know, man. Like, don't ask me questions like that.
I do enjoy them going. Brad Pitt gets word of the Sheik coming in, so he wants to show Redford the Sheik coming in, and he's like, "Oh, there's a great Mexican restaurant in Beirut," and he's like, "Okay," but they have to like go through a war zone to get to it. I thought that was really cool.
He's like, I don't know if I want it this bad.
Yeah, and I like that. That's where he pulls out the flask and the birthday gift, and I think that shows the relationship is maybe a little bit closer knit than your average agent asset relationship.
Yeah. Especially when he's like, your birthday was really hard to find because the CIA had like 9 on file, and before Robert Redford could even say like none of them are true, he's like, yeah, I know none of them are true.
Also, Robert Redford, is he just living in that blown up building? He's like shaving in the middle of like a building where like he's on the first floor and that's the only floor. Like,
I think it's just a good looking shot. That's really what it come down to.
yeah, it was, but does it make sense?
But that's where we get dinner out.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna remember that.
That is
yeah, because I guess Brad Pitt's running alcohol in Beirut through London.
Yeah, he's running side ops.
He's making some, but it sounds like a side op just to get him paid. Like it doesn't sound like it's anything else, but just it's like he's got a side hustle. It's not an op. They call it an op because he's an agent, but it's just like I'm making money because you guys don't pay me enough.
Doesn't that eventually help him get the medication in?
Probably, yeah, for sure. And he's able to pay off all the people as he like to get around. So then he gets this doctor who's going to do this, and they lie to. This is the craziest part. They lie to this doctor to get him to do this, only for Robert Redford to kind of get cold feet because he's like, you fucked up by letting the doctor go. So now I have to use the militia, even though the doctor does get there in time. The scene with the militia, the bike coming in, they shoot it down, and then the truck, they kill the guy, but the truck's going so fast it hits. And apparently, originally, the building does come down, but then with 9/11, they like don't show that.
So this is a perfect segue to my Beirut story. You know the actual bombing a few years ago in Beirut, right?
Okay.
You know the Gharrett, have you seen the Creator, the movie The Creator?
I have.
So I believe it's only in the promotional trailer for The Creator. They use the actual Beirut bombing footage, and they just matted futuristic looking buildings on Beirut and then put it in the trailer. But they use the actual bombing of Beirut in the Creator trailer, like in the same month that it happened.
That feels like some VFX people that just were getting lazy, and then they noticed it and like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I don't know how I feel about it. Like on one hand, freedom of speech and artistry,
but
it's also
I think
it's in
someone
bad taste.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's dumb. In bad taste unless you want to like really feel that moment like in real life. But it's like,
I don't think it's not bad taste. It's laziness. That is what happened. Is that someone got lazy? Like they had to get a lot of work done in a limited amount of time.
They're like, geez, I hope something horrible happens somewhere where we can take that footage and make it into the movie. Oh, look at that.
They went on Getty Images and like, all right, what's a video we can use?
You
and
think they put the Beirut bombing on Getty Images like right away?
Probably, yeah, it's probably on there. Okay. So, and then after that, we have the meeting at the airport, and he's like, 70 civilians dead and 1 bad guy. He's like, I called it success. He's like, you have a pretty fucked up barometer. And he's like, we're going to South America. He's like, I'm not going anywhere with you. Like, I'm done. I'm on something else now. Which, it's funny, you kind of find out, oh, he's working with another guy, Harry Duncan, that is Robert Redford's guy. So he's like, I still am watching you. I'm still like, I still have eyes on you. Like, you're my guy.
And then it cuts back, and this is where Robert Redford does the very serious, or more very serious spy stuff for Operation Dinner Out, right? Like, this is when he forges the signature and, as Alon said, steals the imagery and goes through the motions to actually get this to happen,
Well,
to break him out.
so what's like cool, and you talked about this, Lon, but so first of all, I find out the woman left him a Dear John note, which we know is not true. But then he goes into Troy's office and he's like, you can't do this. And Troy's like, I have to go brief the president on this, man. Like, I'm not making this decision. But this is going to happen. And so when he walks in, what, Alon?
We know the Dear John letter isn't true.
Yeah, he admits to it.
Yeah, later
Oh.
Muir faked it so that way he could trade Hadley to the Chinese government in exchange for a diplomatic person who was convicted of espionage.
He goes into Troy, but when he walks in that office, the assistant's like, no, you can't go in there. And he just kind of walks past him. So when he leaves the cigarettes, he knows this assistant is going to go grab them instead of letting him go grab them because he wants stuff from his desk and he's able to grab like the whatever he needs and then he leaves. The rest of this is just so great of Charles figuring out stuff about Muir, knows that he's making calls, and him hiding from him in the office. The Andy Unger guy like losing his key and going back for it. And like him just hiding out in different places in this building but not going home is just very like funny. It's like the way it's done is shot so interesting. It's like you actually feel the chase of it and like that, but he's just like one step ahead of this guy. It's awesome.
But it all seems like disconnected up till this point where all of a sudden when it happens in like succession and he's trying to pay for the blackout and everything like that, you're like, okay, I get it, but who's going to pick him up? And then it's answered, right? He's like on the phone with the base guy with the helicopters.
Well, but it's answered in like the first 10 minutes the first 20 minutes of the movie when he asks Gladys, his secretary, if she knows anyone in military operations in China. And that's where he's like, oh, it's Commander Wiley's outfit. So
it's answered 100%, but you don't know the question yet.
Well, exactly. I think that's what, like David said this earlier. In his 20-minute high-speed drive to Langley, he plans out everything that's going to happen in the next 24 hours. Like, he's just such a good spy. And he's never nervous the entire time. He's always smiling.
Yeah, well, because I think he believes so much in himself. He's like, I can get out, like, no matter what I have to do to save him, I'll be able to get out of it. I do think, though, like, the movie ends with him driving away and he's made it past the gate. And it's like, it's the CIA. If they want to go get him, they're just going to fucking go get him.
I was wondering that because it's like, is there any proof though, right? Like, what can they go get him for after they're like,
they could get him, but they won't. They're gonna sweep it under the rug. They're gonna
it's embarrassing. Credit. It's embarrassing for them, isn't it?
It would be if they were like, this guy did it, but they're now gonna take credit for it, and they're like, we got our guy back.
Right. Exactly. Right. They're gonna say like, this was all our doing. It was our plan. Yeah. It's not the outcome they actually wanted, but they're gonna play it up like it was their doing.
And now they have to roll with it.
Well, especially like when the main guy comes back down into the conference room after getting off the phone and he's like, so there's been an incident in China, and everyone he's like, oh fuck.
And it very much felt like it was shot almost the same way Bourne was. Like the music's very similar. The cutting to him going in the car and like you hear the don't like as he's driving away, and then cuts back to the boardroom and he's like, oh fuck. Like it is funny these two movies came out like at a very similar time, and like Pitt was almost going to be in that one because it's like they're both spy movies. Just
why didn't they have Pitt and McCormick in the same helicopter? I wonder.
I don't know. It's
So
probably
they could just be like eye fucking each other across the airspace,
it's
or what?
operational. It's operational. Yeah, I don't understand why those guys do what they do. So the last meeting too, where we talked about it, we've alluded to it, but Charles tries to nail him, and he's like, "Oh, what about Digger?" And he's like, "Leave Digger out of this." And then he's like, "All right, well, what about the imagery?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've been using government assets to reroute a satellite to the Bahamas." And you're like, no one cares about that. I mean, I guess we got bigger fish to fry right now, but like, what the fuck have you been doing?
Yeah, he's like, I've been using company resources for personal benefit, and then explains like global warming.
Yeah, erosion of my island.
You can even see the guy being like, "We got him. He's admitting right now in real time that he's used uh, government assets for his personal use." And he's like, "Not what you think, bitch.
Yeah.
Not what you think."
And then he explains about how Hadley ended up in jail, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to let him die." But the call with Commander Wiley, and he's like, "Yep, Operation Dinner Out is a go," and he's like, or no, he's like, "Dinner Out is a go," and he's like, "Who the fuck talks to the wife that way?" And he's like, "Well, why do you think they keep leaving him?" And then as he's driving away, they're like, "What is he had 4 wives?" And the one guy's like, "He's only had 1 wife." He's like, "All the other people were assets." And then they're like, they start to figure it out, and then the guy comes back in. He's like, "There's been an incident," and like, "Oh fuck!" Like
Yeah.
we've just been had. He even Charles the indignity of having a guy walk him out. He's like, walk him out of this building so he can never come back. And he's like, I don't need that. I don't need to come back. I've already accomplished what I needed to. Like, I'm good.
I like the movie. Okay, guys.
Not enough.
I like
Fucking asshole. The way at the end when Brad Pitt's like, "Wait, what'd you say?" He's like, "Oh, Operation Dinner Out," and he like knows. He knows Robert Redford cared
It's-
about him enough.
It's cool. It's
His
cool.
Now
father figure.
He's now going to share some of his dinner out liquor money with them to buy the island.
Yeah, he's gonna have to help him out.
You have to wonder, right? If Robert Redford's been in this biz for like, way more years than Brad Pitt's been in it, how much money has Brad Pitt actually accumulated over this time? I mean, maybe depending on how successful his liquor business went, right?
He's driving a Porsche 912. Like, I think Robert Redford's doing just fine.
I do definitely think they're going to go into some consulting, contracting type stuff after this to make some big bucks. I think they're going to be put on some payrolls of some people, and they're going to make some money.
Well, Brad Pitt might be like court-martialed or put on trial or whatever happens if you're in the CIA and go rogue.
Potentially, yeah, he might get.
But then it could become public that wasn't their plan. So maybe that's the point. Is now he's got to get off scot-free.
You know what? Yeah, you know what? Shit. Yeah, because they might have to let him off because what are they? The original mission was to spy on the Chinese. They don't want that to get out, so they're like, no. We wanted him to break this woman out. That's this is our idea. I don't think it plays out that way, but So unlike Alon, who seems a little lukewarm on this, I just think you need to watch it 5 more times, and you
That's my problem.
You needed to have watched it on like USA or TNT like over and over again as a kid. That's what you needed, or like to stick your DVD into your PlayStation 2 and just rock with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt as a 14, 15-year-old.
Yeah, and I think it's easier to watch when you can fast forward through Beirut.
Beirut's important though, but it is like it does definitely. You're in Beirut for like that section is like 30 minutes. It's the entire third quarter of the movie.
Yeah, and you can see them get breakfast and meet Hadley.
There's still good stuff in there.
I mean, that's the biggest action. I think part of it was that. I mean, it's called Spy Game. It's Brad Pitt. It's Robert Redford. It's Tony Scott. I think it's supposed to be an action movie. And the only real action takes place in the Vietnam scene and then Beirut.
I mean, I might have fast forwarded a little bit.
You motherfucker.
But no, I mean, I you know what? I think you might be right. I think this might actually just be one of those movies for me that I need to watch a couple more times to really get it. I mean, that's kind of the way the Bourne movies were for me. But then again, I was like really young. I was really young when the Bourne movies first came out. So, it was no Mission Impossible high octane sort of thing when I was 10?
I was thinking if I could recast Hadley and you give her, she'd have a little bit of a bigger role. There would definitely be more of the romance scenes. Who would you put? Do you have a Garrett? Do you have
Catherine
a
Zeta-Jones.
No, I was thinking. Yeah, well, you guys are going to disagree.
Catherine
with me.
Zeta-Jones.
Yeah, this is around the time she did Entrapment with Sean Connery.
Oh, I mean, she's hot and all, but wait, are we doing can we do anyone, or do we have to pick someone within that time?
Someone within that time that could actually do it.
I got to look up someone.
I was thinking Cate Blanchett.
I
honestly always remember it being her. Like for the longest time, I thought it was her. I think Cate Blanchett would be perfect in that. You'd have to give her a bigger part.
She would need more screen time to chew on, I think.
I bet you guys are gonna make fun of me for this.
Probably.
I got to make sure her age is kind of matchy. Is her age matchy?
But
I mean,
Kate and Brad have after this have some good history together in
Benjamin Button.
Okay,
Babel and
I'll say
Benjamin
it.
Button.
Rebecca Ferguson.
Hey, she wasn't.
How
big
old
back
was
then,
she?
though.
She was 24.
Yeah, but was she doing anything? Was she an actress?
Oh wait, was she 24? Hold on.
You do need someone who can play not American, right? Like that's gotta be.
She was 18.
She was 18.
I
Barely,
don't think that...
and when they filmed, she would not have been 18.
Well, hang on. That's another point. Would it be better if that character had been American, and that gives them more justification to break her out?
But I think it would have been worse for the story. I don't think you want to give them that justification. I think making her non-American and making her almost like an enemy of her country is a more interesting, complex situation.
This would have been a big breakout for Rebecca Ferguson because the only thing she had done at that point was called Naya Tieder, which was is it German? Is it
all right, what about
she's looking very young right there.
I think Rebecca Ferguson could play non-American, whatever. Okay.
I wish I could screen share so you could.
Right?
I think she's German or something.
She's not American. What about Kate Beckinsale?
Yeah, fucking obviously, yeah, obviously. I like mine though.
She's Swedish. She's Swedish.
Yeah, one of them. If we're gonna choose a Kate, I liked mine. Anyway, Garrett and I obviously love this movie. Garrett, do you want to talk more lovingly about it before we go?
Well, last thing I want to say, did you guys see who it was dedicated to at the end? Fun fact. His mom, and it came out the same year as Black Hawk Down, which his brother made, which was also dedicated to their mom.
That's not. I don't know if that's a fun fact because that means obviously she passed, but
she did. But it shows that she had loving sons.
They're good, yeah, and they're both releasing bangers, Well, everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David,
and this is Alon,
and I'm Garrett,
and we finally watched. Oh yeah, you finally watched.
I'm the one who finally watched Spy Game.